The camera finds a 16-year-old girl standing on an MGM soundstage, her brunette hair tied in pigtails, tears welling in her eyes as she sings about somewhere over the rainbow. But here's what those tears really meant. During the filming of that iconic scene, Judy Garland was literally starving. Studio executives had labeled her a fat little pig with pigtails and restricted her to a diet of black coffee, chicken soup, and cigarettes while feeding her amphetamines to keep her energy up during grueling 18-hour workdays. This wasn't just harsh treatment. It was the beginning of a systematic destruction that would haunt her until her final breath. "I was always lonesome," Judy confessed in a 1967 interview, mere months before her death. "The truth is that Hollywood never really knew me, and the girl who sang Over the Rainbow was a girl desperate to be loved, but always feeling alone." What you're about to discover is how a young girl with an extraordinary gift was sacrificed at the altar of Hollywood stardom, and how her tragic story would ultimately transform the entertainment industry forever. The prodigy's painful beginning. Born Frances Ethel Gumm in 1922, Judy displayed extraordinary talent by age 2. Her father, Frank, who faced persistent rumors about his sexuality, relocated the family multiple times before settling in California. This early instability planted the seeds of insecurity that would blossom into crippling anxiety later in her life. The Gumm Sisters act put little Frances center stage, but it was her mother Ethel who truly drove her career. Unlike the nurturing stage mothers of Hollywood mythology, Ethel was described by Judy's first husband, David Rose, as the real terror of the Gumm family, viewing her talented daughter primarily as the family's meal ticket rather than a child needing protection. When 13-year-old Judy auditioned for Louis B. Mayer at MGM in 1935, she had no idea she was entering a system that would simultaneously make her a global icon while destroying her personal life. While signing her, Mayer turned to an associate and remarked, "She's not pretty, but she's got something." That something was an unmatched ability to convey emotional truth through song that would eventually break hearts worldwide. But this gift came with a terrible cost. MGM executives immediately began reshaping young Judy to fit their mold. They fitted her with removable dental caps, prosthetics to reshape her nose, and bound her developing breasts to maintain a childlike appearance well into her teens. Most disturbingly, a studio-appointed handler followed her around the MGM commissary, slapping her hand if she reached for anything beyond her strictly controlled diet. Anne Rutherford, who worked alongside Judy during this era, later revealed, "None of us recognized what was happening to her as abuse. The studio doctor giving her pills was seen as helping her meet the demands of her schedule, not setting her up for a lifetime of addiction." Remember this moment, the beginning of a pattern of medication that would ultimately lead to her tragic end. The Wizard and the Dark Side of Oz. What few fans realize is that Judy wasn't MGM's first choice for Dorothy Gale. The role was originally intended for Shirley Temple, and 16-year-old Judy was cast opposite actors in their 30s and 40s, forcing her to embody an even younger character than her age. During filming of The Wizard of Oz, studio doctors prescribed amphetamines for morning energy and barbiturates to sleep at night, a studio-mandated cycle that initialized her lifelong struggle with addiction. These weren't recreational choices, they were work requirements administered by authority figures she trusted. The iconic blue gingham dress she wore as Dorothy concealed a brutal reality. Judy was tightly corseted to appear younger and thinner, often struggling to breathe properly while performing. The famous scene where Dorothy and her friends fall asleep in the poppy field wasn't entirely acting. Judy was genuinely exhausted from 18-hour workdays, followed by mandatory public appearances. Jack Haley, who played the Tin Man, reflected years later, "None of us fully appreciated what she endured. We were adults with established careers. She was a child carrying an entire film on her shoulders while being told she wasn't good enough." The irony couldn't be more painful. As millions of children watched Dorothy long for home in Kansas, the real girl behind the character was being denied any semblance of a normal childhood. This dichotomy between Judy's public persona and private pain would define her entire career, a mystery we'll see unfold as her story continues. If you're enjoying this journey through Judy's extraordinary life, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Nostalgic Icons for more revealing stories about the legends who defined a generation. Hit that notification bell to make sure you never miss an upload. The price of stardom. By 28, Judy had already weathered 2 divorces, countless public humiliations, and her firing from MGM, the studio that had controlled her since childhood. Rather than supporting her recovery, Hollywood gossip columnists branded her unreliable and difficult, never acknowledging the studio's role in creating her dependencies. What's truly shocking is what happened after MGM terminated her contract in 1950. She faced a devastating reality. The studio had claimed most of her earnings through creative accounting, leaving her nearly bankrupt despite starring in over 24 hit films. The IRS pursued her for back taxes on money she never actually received. Following a suicide attempt, Judy staged a remarkable comeback with her legendary 1951 concerts at New York's Palace Theater. Broadway columnist Earl Wilson wrote that these performances were not mere performances, but emotional confessionals set to music. Audiences witnessed a new Judy, raw, vulnerable, and connecting with them on a profoundly personal level. This ability to transform pain into artistry would become Judy's greatest gift to the world, a gift that would reach its pinnacle a decade later at Carnegie Hall. But first, she would face Hollywood's ultimate betrayal. The A-Star is Born betrayal. In 1954, Judy mounted what should have been her triumphant Hollywood return in Warner Brothers' A Star is Born. Her performance earned a standing ovation at the premiere and widespread critical acclaim. Oscar buzz was immediate and intense. What happened next reveals Hollywood's cruelest betrayal of Judy. Warner Brothers executives, responding to theater owners' complaints about the film's length, butchered the movie without director George Cukor or Judy's knowledge, cutting nearly 30 minutes of crucial material. When Judy saw the mutilated version, she wept openly. Though still nominated for an Academy Award, Judy lost to Grace Kelly in a shocking upset that many industry insiders viewed as punishment for her earlier difficult reputation. Adding to the humiliation, NBC sent a full camera crew to Judy's hospital room where she was recovering from childbirth, expecting to broadcast her acceptance speech. When she lost, they simply packed up and left without explanation. James Mason, her co-star, called it the cruelest moment in Academy history. They built her up only to tear her down again, and this time it was entirely undeserved. This pattern, building Judy up only to tear her down, would repeat throughout her life, creating cycles of triumph and despair that fed both her artistry and her addictions. But her greatest professional moment was still to come. The Carnegie Hall triumph. Judy's resilience showed once more in 1961 when she performed at Carnegie Hall in what critics have called the greatest night in show business history. The resulting live album, Judy at Carnegie Hall, won 5 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year, making her the first woman to win this honor, and spent an astonishing 73 weeks on the Billboard charts, 13 of those at number 1. What makes this triumph so poignant is what few people knew behind the scenes. Despite creating one of the best-selling albums of the era, Judy was virtually homeless at this point, staying with friends and in hotels, her finances in ruins despite her continued earning power. This remarkable paradox, being simultaneously beloved by millions yet personally destitute, captures the ultimate tragedy of Judy's life. The more the world adored her talent, the more the industry exploited her vulnerability. Final act, London's Last Curtain. By early 1969, Judy's health had deteriorated severely from decades of prescribed medications. She arrived in London for a 5-week engagement at the Talk of the Town nightclub, earning £2,500 per week. Though physically diminished, weighing barely 90 pounds, her opening night received a 12-minute standing ovation. British audiences embraced her vulnerability in ways American crowds sometimes failed to. But as the weeks progressed, her performances became increasingly erratic. On some nights, her only sustenance was vodka, and she often called her new husband Mickey Deans out from the wings as she struggled through her set list. Rosalind Wilder, who worked as Judy's assistant during this time, later described Deans as the dreadful man who became her husband. If she had put an advert in a newspaper for the most unsuitable person to take care of her, she wouldn't have had a better response. What nobody realized during those London performances was that they would be among her last. On March 25, 1969, Judy gave her final concert in Copenhagen, Denmark. 3 months later, on June 22nd, Mickey Deans found Judy dead in the bathroom of their rented London home. The official cause was listed as an accidental overdose of barbiturates, the very same drugs first prescribed to her as a teenage MGM contract player. The most heartbreaking revelation came after her death. Despite earning millions throughout her career, Judy died with less than $50 to her name and significant debt. The entertainment industry that had profited so handsomely from her extraordinary gifts had left her with nothing but memories and fading applause. Remember the young girl forced to take pills to keep working? Remember the studio that bound her breasts and starved her to fit their image? Remember the financial exploitation that left her broke despite hit after hit? The story that began with a child's exploitation ended with a legend's abandonment, the ultimate betrayal of Hollywood's brightest star. The legacy that changed Hollywood. But Judy Garland's story doesn't end with her death. In fact, her greatest impact may be in how her tragic life ultimately helped transform the very industry that destroyed her. Her experiences became a rallying cry for improved treatment of child performers, eventually leading to the strengthening of the California Child Actors Bill, or Coogan Law, in the 1970s. Today's child actors have protections Judy could only dream of: limited working hours, mandatory education, and financial trusts that protect their earnings. Her struggles with studio-induced addiction brought attention to Hollywood's dangerous relationship with pharmaceuticals decades before it became a public concern. When we see modern drug monitoring on film sets today, we're witnessing Judy's painful legacy transformed into vital protections. Perhaps most significantly, Judy's openness about her struggles, rare for her era, helped destigmatize conversations about mental health and entertainment. As her daughter Liza Minnelli later observed, "Mother never hid her problems because she couldn't. In that way, she made it possible for others to eventually seek help without shame." The little girl who was once labeled a fat little pig with pigtails ultimately forced an entire industry to examine its most exploitative practices. The teenager who was drugged to meet impossible filming schedules helped create a world where such abuse is recognized as criminal. The woman who died penniless despite creating timeless art sparked conversations about fair compensation that continue today. The true measure of Judy's enduring impact isn't just in her unforgettable performances, but in how her personal tragedies ultimately led to meaningful industry reforms. Her suffering forced Hollywood to confront its darkest practices, eventually creating a slightly more humane system for those who followed. If this glimpse into Judy Garland's remarkable but troubled life resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to Nostalgic Icons for more revealing stories about the entertainment legends who shaped our cultural landscape. We're dedicated to honoring these icons by telling their complete stories, both the triumphs that made them legends and the struggles that made them human. Judy's haunting question from a 1967 interview perhaps best captures her complex legacy. "If I'm such a legend, why am I so lonely?" Legends usually gather, they don't seek. In sharing these stories, we ensure that the real Judy Garland, not just the MGM creation, is remembered, honored, and finally understood. The rainbow she sang about may have been fiction, but the positive changes her tragic life inspired for future generations are very real indeed.